That's right, Apple just had their WWDC 2019 keynote where they announced a whole bunch of stuff, including, yes, a $1,000 monitor stand, just for the stand, that goes with their 6K Retina display that is mostly going to be paired with their new Mac Pro devices. Now, I have to say that probably is the most absurd part of the entire presentation. The rest of the stuff actually was pretty cool. Apple did announce a lot of new stuff that was pretty interesting and actually worth talking about. So we'll pretty much go through all the stuff that I think is worth mentioning, skip all the nonsense, although a lot of the presentation was not fluff. They pretty much had just back-to-back announcements of features and stuff, including like TVOS, a new iPad OS, iOS 13, some new hardware, so we can go over all of that. We can start off with tvOS. There's really only two new features here that I think are worth mentioning, really. First of all, tvOS for Apple TV is going to have multi-user support, so now, people can have different playlists or whatever in their household. And the other thing is Apple TV will now support Xbox and PlayStation controllers for controlling the OS, so that's pretty cool. Next, for Apple Watch, Apple did announce WatchOS 6 with a few new features. Some notable ones included some new watch faces, of course, and they also added support for independent apps that don't need the companion app on the iPhone, so that's pretty cool. Some native ones will include a voice recorder and a calculator, and they also added a decibel meter for measuring sound levels, although I'm not really sure how accurate these phone app decibel meters are. I can't imagine they're going to be as accurate as a standalone device. So with that out of the way, we can get to the really good part. iOS 13, they announced a whole bunch of new stuff for that. First off, they of course made it a lot faster. So they say that Face ID unlocks will be about 30% faster. They're also making app downloads a lot smaller, so it shouldn't take as long. So it's going to be 50% smaller app downloads. And they're also making updates apparently 60% smaller, so it should download a lot faster there. And app launches apparently will be about 2 times faster, so they definitely increased a lot of optimizations in this case. Another big feature is dark mode. This is something that people have been asking for forever. I'm not really a huge fan of dark mode. I don't really care about it, but if you are using a phone with a OLED screen like the XS or one of the new phones, then you will be able to save probably a lot of battery life by using dark mode, because of course the screen with the OLED is going to be using a big chunk of the battery, and if it's a black thing on the screen, then those pixels aren't using any power. So you could save a lot of battery life if you use dark mode, presumably. Next up, having to do with the Reminders app. They apparently completely redid this, added a bunch of features, some notable ones including being able to attach things to reminders like pictures and map links and stuff like that. And you can also tag other people in a reminder. So I believe that means that you can have it send a message to other people if your reminder goes off, or maybe just kind of include in contact. So if the reminder goes off, you can call them right from there, that sort of thing. Next, having to do with Apple Maps. We know the whole catastrophe with how bad Apple Maps was when they first announced it, but it has, of course, improved over the years, and they apparently have been really working on it. They took a lot of new data in using sensors, apparently, from cars and planes that they attached to get all this new data. So apparently they're going to have all this 3D building data for the entire USA by the end of 2019, which is pretty cool. They're also going to have a bunch of street view data, which is pretty much just kind of playing catch up with Google Maps, but it's still nice. Okay, next, having to do with privacy. Apple announced a lot of new features geared toward privacy in iOS 13. One big one is location data. So you can now have the option to only share your location with an app once, and then have to give it permission every time again later it wants to request it. So none more of this thing where they always have the ability to see your location, or even only using the app, you can have it just do one and done. And Apple also added some Wi-Fi and Bluetooth protection, so apps can't access that data to kind of infer your location even if it doesn't have the direct GPS connection. Okay, next, this is a really significant one I'm really excited about, and that is sign in with Apple. So you know how a lot of apps allow you to sign in with either Google, Facebook, whatever. Now you can do it with your Apple account, but Apple added in a lot of options that are more privacy oriented, so you can choose what information exactly you want this app to get, whether it's your name, email address, And if you don't want to give it your email address, you can actually give it a temporary, specific, unique email address that Apple will generate and it'll basically forward to you. So if they start spamming you, you can actually disable that temporary email address and then you won't have to get their crap anymore. I think this is awesome. I hope apps will start using this. So, you know, there's a lot of apps that require you to like make an account when you download their app. It's so annoying. Just another password to keep track of. Hopefully now you'll be able to just sign into most apps with Apple and not have to worry about it. Now, another kind of weird feature Apple announced is with HomeKit video. So they now allow you to connect with certain video cameras that are like IP cameras from certain manufacturers, and they're actually going to be having a service where Apple will actually get that video feed and keep storage of it for like 10 days. So if you don't trust maybe other companies to store your data, now you'll get it with Apple, so they offer that now. Here's a cool feature with messages. So Apple added the ability to share your photo and name with people you message on iMessage, even if they don't have your contact info in their address book. So say you're messaging someone for the first time and they just gave you your their phone number, you can actually choose to send that message to them and have it show your picture and name to them, and it's optional, of course, so that when they get that message, they'll know it's from you. Moving on to cameras and photos, here's some exciting stuff. So now, you know how there's a lot of editing features with photos, like cropping, rotating. You can now apparently do that with videos too, at least the rotating. I'm not 100% sure about the cropping, but also filters and stuff. Most of those features can now be applied to video. They've also added improved portrait lighting effects. So if you take a portrait photo of someone, you can like theoretically move the virtual light forward and back so it'll look more like a studio light or something like that. And in the Photos app, they added a new Photos tab that uses machine learning to kind of filter out a bunch of like redundant photos and pictures of receipts and stuff that you don't really care about seeing. This is really similar to what Google announced in their features, so you can now do that. We got some other random features, like Siri now uses a neural text-to-speech engine, which just means Siri's gonna sound a lot more natural. They've also added some better call spam detection, so if it detects spam, send it right to voicemail. And apparently Apple is introducing separate iCloud accounts, so you can have like a work and a personal one, so that's neat. I don't know when they're gonna introduce that. Here's a neat feature. With iOS 13 devices, you'll now be able to like share music by just tapping your phone against someone else's. So if you're listening to music and you're like, hey, listen to this, you can apparently now just tap it on theirs and then they can hear through their earpods. Okay, so that was iOS 13. Now we're moving on to a new OS called iPadOS. So basically, Apple kind of branched off iOS, so now there will be a new one, iPadOS, that will be able to presumably fully be able to take advantage of iPad. This includes things like being able to add more icons to the screen, which of course is important. Before, you know, you could only have the same amount of limited icons on the iPad home screen, even though it had so much more room. You'll also be able to pin the widgets bar onto the main home screen, which is really nice. Also, iPad will now support thumb drives and SD cards. Anything you plug into it, now you can use the Finder on there or whatever, the File Explorer, to actually see external devices. It definitely seems like Apple is trying to make the iPad more like a portable laptop type thing and not just like a big iOS device, which is nice. This includes adding some more desktop features to Safari, including like a download manager, so you'll be able to use Safari more like you would on a desktop. Another interesting thing is you'll be able to download custom fonts from the App Store and use on your iPad. So this is probably going to be really useful if you do like graphic design and you want to add custom fonts, of course, you'll be able to do that. And they also improved the Apple Pencil latency down from 20 to 9 milliseconds, which is awesome. Also, here's a big one. They added the ability for your iPad to be used as a second screen for your Mac computer, so your MacBook, your desktop MacBook, whatever. That's awesome. Speaking of Macs, the next big topic we can talk about is the Mac Pro. This is a long time coming. Apple really listened apparently to professionals and they made one that is pretty awesome, though of course it's going to be expensive. The design is pretty weird. A lot of people say it looks like a cheese grater, which is pretty much exactly true, but it still looks pretty cool. The maximum specs are obviously really awesome, though going to be super expensive. The minimum specs model is going to cost you like $6,000, but some of the specs that it goes up to would be a Xeon processor up to 28 cores, and then 2,933 megahertz RAM and 6 channels, and that's up to 1.5 terabytes of RAM, although I highly doubt most people will ever get close to that amount. It'll have a lot of PCI expansion slots, so 8 total, 4 double wide, 3 regular wide, and 1 for like an IO slot. It's gonna have 2 10 gigabit Ethernet ports and state-of-the-art graphics, of course, including an afterburner ASIC card, which is going to be used for transcoding if you're doing video editing. So even if you're doing like 8K footage, you'll not have to use a proxy codec, which I'm not going to get into. Basically, if you're doing video editing, that's something that'll be awesome. Along with the Mac Pro, they announced a new monitor, the 6K Pro Display XDR, which costs at least $5,000 or $6,000 if you want to get the nano back display type design. It is a Retina display, and obviously 6K is ridiculous resolution, and it has a sustainable 1,000 nits or 1,600 nits peak. Now, the pricing, $5,000 and $6,000. You might think that's ridiculous for a display, but I mean, it is a high resolution 6K, and it is supposedly a reference monitor. If you're not familiar with reference monitors, they are used in like video editing, professional settings, and they can be exceptionally expensive. I'm talking tens of thousands of dollars. So if it can keep up that performance along with some of those other reference monitors that are used in the industry, then that actually, believe it or not, is a pretty good price. As I mentioned, the stand alone for this monitor would be an extra $999. Now, I've heard that the reasoning for this is a lot of professional users aren't going to be using that stand. They already have stands that are like mounted, like Visa mounts. So they're going to just take off their old one, put it on. They're not even going to need the stand. But they do also sell the Visa mount for like $200. So a lot of people probably won't be buying this, but I think the $1,000 price tag for that stand is really still ridiculous. Also, when they announced that price, the audience's reaction was hilarious. They went from clapping for the display to just like murmuring and gasping when they said that price. It was great. All right, now the final topic I think worth mentioning is the new macOS Catalina. A big thing is Apple is now going to be splitting iTunes into 3 different apps. So there's going to be the music, the podcasts, and the TV apps. So no more iTunes. It's going to be 3 separate things. One consequence of this, which is actually good, is that when you're syncing your iPhone with your Mac at least, you don't have to load it into iTunes anymore. It'll just load right into the Finder, so it's kind of natively supported with macOS. Another cool feature is kind of like how iPhone has that activation lock where you can lock your phone and then you have to log in with your iCloud account or else it'll be basically useless. They're now introducing that feature with Macs. So if your Mac gets lost or something, you can have it kind of call home and get deactivated, and then that Mac won't boot. It's useless unless it gets reactivated with your account. Also, they're improving the Find My iPhone, Find My Mac feature. So now, even if your Mac is offline, it'll kind of send out a beacon using Bluetooth. So if it's near other iOS or Mac devices by other people, those phones will receive that beacon and then be able to send the location to you. So if your Mac was stolen or you lost it on a bench or something and someone walks by with an iPhone, then if the battery obviously is on the Mac still running, or I think it'll even apply to your iOS device, then you can get a notification, hey, your device is here, and it's all anonymous, encrypted, so it's not like the person gets a notification that, hey, you're near a Mac device, then they could go steal it or something like that. It's all safe. So that'll be pretty awesome. I think it'll really help with people who maybe lose their phone and it's either not connected to Wi-Fi or it's like in a place that doesn't have really good cell reception or it's indoors. That'll be pretty cool. And I think that's pretty much it. There was a lot of other stuff they talked about, but that was really just the big stuff. And they went on to talk about a bunch of other random stuff for like another hour, including like virtual reality. So you can look up the main keynote if you want yourself and watch the rest of that. Let me know in the comments what you think was the best feature. If there was something I did not mention that you think was definitely worth talking about, we can discuss that down there. If you want to keep watching, I'll put some other videos right here you can click on. As usual, if you want to subscribe, I make a couple videos a week, so it should be worth it. So thanks so much for watching, guys. I'll see you next time. Have a good one.